through Silverglade. Tell me how you got involved in the boxing game.
Well, I've loved boxing from as early as I can remember. I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, and my father was involved with sports. He was one of the creators of the Police Athletic League in Trenton, New Jersey, and his specialty was boxing. The PAL is a multi-sport program. However, his specialty was boxing, and we had a boxing gym right next door to the house I lived in. So I was in the gym for many years. The training was always terrific, but the fighters were great. I always enjoyed the kids that came in and the champions that came in and the people that we would meet. So I trained a lot, but I did not fight. I had no amateur or pro fights myself. Then I went away to college, and I graduated in business administration from Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania, and decided I had to do my own thing. I can't follow my father's footsteps because young man in the 60s, you got to go out on your own. So I was recruited from college by Sears Roebuck and Company, who at the time was the #1 corporation in the world. Great organization, and I was with them in management. I stayed with them for 16 years, but the longer I was with them, the more I knew I disliked what I was doing. I didn't like wearing a suit and tie every day. I had a nice responsibility and a lot of people working for me, a nice salary, nice benefits, but I really hated going in and working every day, and realized that my father was right from the beginning. So as I was continuing my career with Sears, I contacted my dad and asked him to get involved with amateur boxing for a while. So I was here in New York. He contacted the local people, and I became a referee and a judge. And I soon realized I liked the amateur sports very much, but I didn't like being a referee or a judge because I related to the kids too much. I helped them out. I drove them to the events and go out to eat with them afterward and stuff. So it was difficult to judge their bouts and have a relationship with them as well. So I went into the administration end of it, and eventually became the president of amateur boxing in New York as I continued to make my my living working at Sears. So as president, I had to go out to all the gyms on occasion and work with them and help them out. One day I was in Gleasons, and I was with the owner at the time. His name was Ira Becker, and we were friendly. I've been with him for a long time. But we just had a casual conversation. We're having some coffee, and he mentioned that he was looking for a partner. And I said, Ira, don't look any further. I'm going to be your partner. And the next day I went back to Sears Roebuck and I resigned. I took my profit sharing and bought 50% of the gym. And that was back in the early 80s. And then unfortunately Ira passed away in 1991. So I bought the family out, and I've been the sole owner of Gleasons since 1991. And it was just because I didn't like what I was doing for a living.
That's actually very interesting when you say you took all your profit sharing and invested in the gym. Tell us a little bit so the boxers can understand the value of investing in yourself. Because you actually gambled and invested in yourself.
Well, I'm a 100% believer that you have to be self-employed. You have to rely on yourself. Don't rely on other people. In my case, I worked for Sears. It was a huge organization, a great salary, great benefits, and I was guaranteed a check once a month. We got paid. I was guaranteed the check once a month. I was guaranteed my bonuses, but I disliked what I was doing, and I knew that I could only go so far with the company. I was just an employee. And the company, rightfully so, was taking advantage of me and my abilities to make money for the rest of the company and for the profit or the profit holders, the shareholders. And so I said, listen, if I'm going to work real hard, I might as well work for myself. And I absolutely think that every fighter out there, every individual, should find a way to become self-employed so that you control your own destiny. Like the fighters control their own destiny. Only a fighter can make himself the champion. Everybody else is just a surrounding individual. Well, your life is the same way. And if you take control of your life, find what you like to do, and be your own boss, you'll be much more successful in the long run. You can make as much or as little as you want to. It's up to you. You can work as much or as little as you care to. It's up to you. But you're your own boss. So if you have any possibility whatsoever, get an idea, fall in love with your idea, get the capital, invest in yourself, and you'll be very successful.
When you say rightfully so, take advantage of it, can you break that down a little bit more?
I'm sorry, rightfully so?
When did I say? Your employer at Sears Robots took advantage of it, rightfully so.
Listen, sure. The corporation, whether it's small or large, is in business to make money. Whether it's a privately owned company or whether it's a public company, everybody's in business to make money. The owners of the company or the officers of the company, their responsibility is to get employees that are going to be successful for the company. Obviously, the individual wants to have a salary and benefits for themselves as well, but the overall goal of the company is for the company. It's not for the individual. So, rightfully so, Sears hired me. I was a hard-working individual. I was loyal to the company, and I felt obligated to do as much as I could for the company. But it was for the company, it wasn't for me. And so I think you should turn that around and work that hard for yourself as opposed to someone else.
And what I really find interesting about it is that Sears is virtually out of business, but you're still here. Can you speak upon that point to me?
Love to. I think it's ironic that Sears, when I was hired, was absolutely the #1 corporation in the world. They were the biggest company anywhere. Since I retired, they've since almost filed or have filed for bankruptcy and bankruptcy relief. Conversely, this area that we're in, which is now called Dumbo, Dumbo stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass. When I first moved Gleasons here back in 1984, was a disaster. I mean, it was nobody was living here. There were certain people in the buildings that were not supposed to be living there, but they were there because nobody was stopping them. There were a few artists in the area. There were only 2 corporations back then when I first came here. They've since gone, so I'm the oldest corporation in the area. But it went from a totally depressed area to now being ranked the 4th wealthiest area in all 5 boroughs. And I'm hoping that that's, again, because of Gleason's Gym. So we've turned this area from a disaster into the 4th wealthiest area. And then when I left Sears, it went from being the #1 corporation to filing bankruptcy. So maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But yes, Sears is on the brink of bankruptcy, and we've been able to bring Gleasons to a very, very nice position.
So tell us about the Gleasons dynasty. What year exactly did you get involved with Gleasons?
Okay. Well, the Gleasons started in 1937. It's currently the oldest active boxing gym in the United States. There was a fellow by the name of Robert Gagliardi. He was a cab driver. He was Italian, and he had some fighters and wanted to have his own gym. There was a gym in Manhattan at the time called Stillman's, which was the gym. It was the biggest gym in the world. It was the one that everyone went to. It was in Manhattan on 8th Avenue, and I believe it was 54th Street. And Bobby Gagliardi decided that that wasn't for him. He needed his own place. So he found a location in the Bronx. It was called the Hub section, 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. And it was an Irish area. So he decided that's where he was going to put his gym. However, he was Italian, and back in 1937, the Italians and the Irish didn't get along real well. So he decided he couldn't open up an Italian gym in an Irish area, so he came up with the name Gleasons, so it sounded Irish. He became very successful. His first champion was a fellow by the name of Phil Terranova, very quickly followed by Jake LaMotta. So it became a hot gym, and a lot of fighters wanted to start going there. And Gagliardi decided to legally change his name to Gleason, so it was, became known as Bobby Gleason's Gym. And when I purchased the gym in 1982, we trademarked it to Gleason's Gym. However, Bobby had his gym in the Bronx from 1937 to 1974, and at that point the gym, or the building that it was in, was torn down. They made a housing project out of it, and Bobby was forced to relocate, and he went into Manhattan. And we were at the corner of 8th Avenue and 30th Street, right next to Madison Square Garden. It was a terrific location, and it was the first gym, first boxing gym to ever be a first floor walk-in. Usually gyms were on higher floors because rents were less expensive, etc. But Bobby was able to cut a real good deal on 30th Street, and we were first floor walk-in, and we were the only tenant in a 17-story high-rise. And so for 10 years we ruled. We were in there. Everybody that wanted to fight at Madison Square Garden obviously came over to Gleasons and trained. At this time, Madison Square Garden was still known as the Mecca of boxing, and the place where everybody wanted to compete. So great fighters, 10-round fighters from anywhere in the world, they would come in. They would take a 4-round fight just to be able to fight at Madison Square Garden. And we were able to be associated with them. And so Gleasons grew in stature and notoriety, and many of the New York City-based fighters trained at Gleasons. The gym I mentioned earlier, Stillman's, went out of business in 1953, when Lou Stillman retired, and so Gleasons took over. Gleasons became the Stillman's, the big gym of the time, and we were located in Manhattan, right next to the Mecca of boxing. So everything was working very well. New York City was still the prime spot for boxing in the world. It since has left New York City, but at the time it was New York City and Gleason's Gym and Madison Square Garden, which were the 3 pillars of boxing in the world. So we took advantage of that, and then in at the end of 1983, the landlord of our building came in to see me and said, "Bruce, take a walk with me for a moment." And we went up to the top floor, and you could hear the rat-a-tat-tat of the speed bags and all the noise from the gym on the first floor up in the 17th floor. So he said, "It's not going to work out. You know, I'm turning the building into co-ops, and we have to get some tenants in here. So Gleasons has to relocate." So this was now in 1984. There was a recession going on. My partner Ira and I looked all around, couldn't find a suitable spot, and then we were contacted by a developer by the name of David Walentis, who brought us over to this disaster area. It wasn't called Dumbo at the time. It's the area located between the Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the BQE, and the river. And it's a nice area. It's got nice transportation, but it was totally dilapidated. And Walentis had the idea that he was going to develop it and make it into a very nice residential area. And he showed us his plans, and everything looked really gorgeous. But that didn't matter to us. What mattered was that the rent was extremely low. He just needed some tenants in here. He liked Gleason's Gym. He wanted us to come over. So we cut a deal and got a 10-year lease, and there was nobody in the area. We were the only people. The other 2 businesses eventually went out of business, and we were told, be very careful, don't come in on the F train, be careful of the AC train, only come in from the 2-3 from Brooklyn Heights. The area was populated basically with crack addicts, prostitutes, and the mafia that were burying their bodies down here under the bridges, and Gleasons Gym. And we had a great time. We had a bit of a monopoly on boxing back then, and so the fighters had to follow us wherever we were, and we only had fighters. There was no such thing as a woman in the gym. There was no such thing as children or businessmen. So it was only the fighters, and the fighters had no problem coming here. And everything that David Walentis told us he was going to do, he eventually did. The first probably 15 to 17 years that we were here, the development was extremely slow because of zoning and lawsuits and different basic things that you have to get done with the city to get a project like this underway. But now that I've been here, I guess close to 35, 36 years, everything that David Walentis said he was going to do, he has done. It is now an extremely wealthy area. As I said, it's ranked the 4th wealthiest in all 5 boroughs. We're maxed out as far as people being able to move into this area. The stores are completely filled. There's a lot of new construction going on, so there's new 37, 31-story buildings coming in here with more people. They're currently working on the streets and the utilities to be able to house and take care of all the people that are here. But it's become an extremely busy area. The gym has also changed. I went from 100% fighters to probably 10% fighters today, with 90% of my population being women, children, businessmen, people from the neighborhood, from the area. I have 67 nationalities training here. My youngest is 6 years old. My oldest is 83 years old. We have a mixture of everybody. I have Wall Street titans and CEOs from Wall Street training here alongside some of the kids from the projects that don't have a lot of money. And we have a mix of everything, and it's become extremely successful, and a tremendous mix of people. And that's really what boxing gyms are. I mean, I'm talking basically about Gleasons Gym, but boxing gyms are like Gleasons Gym. You know, they're cosmopolitan areas, usually located in your lower socioeconomic areas, but it's a melting pot of people. And as boxing becomes more and more popular, more and more people are coming into gyms and realizing what a tremendous workout it is, and so people come in. They meet the kids that are traditional boxers. They realize what great people they are, how concentrated they are, how focused they are. They assimilate them into their businesses. They come here and they meet the fighters and they train alongside of them and say, hey, you got a fight coming up, I'm coming, I'm buying a ticket. So it's a nice assimilation. The kids from the projects meet the people from the Wall Street areas and types, and like them and start working for them. And the titans from Wall Street come in here and meet the kids and realize they're great employees, they're great people, and they start associating with them socially and going to their fights together. So it's a melting pot, and it's something that is what I love. Okay, it's just meet people every day. You never know who's going to come in here. We've had politicians. I've had people like Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, training here. We've had many politicians, actors, actresses, people from all walks of life, and it's just an exciting thing. So Gleasons went from Manhattan over here to Dumbo. We got here in 1984. Here it is going on 2020, and we're still here. So those 10-year leases that I've gotten, and I was so happy to come because the rent was so low, is no longer so low. But what everything Walentis said he was going to do by bringing a population in here that would support the gym and enable me to pay the rents, he's done. So it's become a very successful place, and I find myself very rewarded as far as having a position that I enjoy. I love coming in here every day. I don't want to go anywhere else, and so I find myself to be a very fortunate person.